Спасибо.
А мы здесь.
Игрушка, телефон.
Сейчас будет рекорд.
У вас цепная реакция.
Геннадий Иванович, можно? Спасибо.
Что сделал?
Будет 4. Как они, сериал пары или как?
Да. Сериал.
Респектируем
Не регулирует.
Кстати, это хороший вопрос. Очки когда было. Очки когда заказали. Они сказали, что у тебя тоже такие серьезные. Спасибо.
Борис, ты улыбался? Ну, я постарался.
Нет, не надо. Не надо. Все, мне тоже не надо. Значит, we can get it maybe in a second.
Нет, ну как первый пойдет на проект? Ты нам никого не делал, да? Просто такой. Слушай, я спросил, ребята,
один. 33 секунды.
Команда тебя увидишь.
Молодец.
Нет, у меня еще сверхзадача есть. У тебя время будет только. Полгода.
Я не попробовался. Наткнулась, что растеклась, не проблема. Там фонолысину 50 грамм воды, фонолоса 50 грамм воды.
9 секунд. Доложить давление в скафандре 0,35.
Ты, значит, проснулся.
Все равно короткая лучше, чем это.
Ну, надо тогда каким-то образом делать еще. Надо действительно мало.
Подсоединить. Сюда? Мы договорились, мы нажимаем.
Миш, давай, чтобы там не ворочаться, ты первый.
Давай. Я.
Улыбнись. Так, и теперь такие формальные. Нормально. Not brave, normal. Миша!
Хорошо, не переживай. Все сказали, что аккуратно.
Чтобы он отвернулся от крышки, я ему сказал.
Самая большая беда с этим микрофоном. Они бы, да, надо какой-нибудь носочек. Чисто соусом. Нет, затем
Все, пожалуйста. Все, спасибо.
Пожалуйста. Все, прекрасно. Все. Joe, hello, this is Gennady. We are checking our home system Iridium, if you remember.
Scams. Why are you saying like that?
Миша, скажи что-нибудь, Джо.
Hey, Joe, glad to hear your voice. It's Michael Kornienko. I'm very sorry for my friends who wake up you tonight.
Все, спасибо. А, вот, да, подметил.
Может, в ночнушке?
Пожалуйста, посмотрите.
можно и забрать не рукопожатие еще. Скрытое окончание. Все, всего лишь, да? Залез, вылез, взвелся.
Еще раз. На фоне вывески курить запрещено.
Теперь Джеффа одного. Я сейчас отойду. Джефф, держишь?
Подписел.
Очень реалистично.
Очень, да.
Поднимайте флаги не спеша, одновременно и до конца не поднимайте.
Нет, подобными головами.
Что у тебя за каша? Запой попала, ты же вроде не куришь.
Конечно.
Да, вот, мне как-то дополнить было.
И только орбитальный полет?
Да. И под квадратом. Сейчас найдем. Вот смотрите, когда такие малые полости все, там бывают маленькие проекты.
Может, правильно.
Сегодня прямо спасибо. Проверка на прочность, можно сказать. Да, будет лучше, да. До 15 градусов.
That's my gift to you right there. Nice. A lot of green. Close.
Один час поиграть. Прям туда. Придержи, да. Да зачем ты нервничаешь-то так?
Спокуха.
Только она сейчас думает, от контроля.
Much smaller than I thought. How do you get in it?
A hole up there.
There you go.
Expedition 43 Flight Engineer Scott Kelly here in Baikonur. Scott, thanks for making the time for us as the clock ticks toward launch in a few days. It's so intriguing to try to put through your mind what you must be going through right now mentally as we approach launch. The couple of years in the making of training, all that goes into being away from the planet for a year. What is going through your mind as you approach launch?
Well, it's clearly a different experience than my previous 3 flights. And let me explain why. My first flight, it was the first time I was flying in space. You know, you're very excited about it, something you've maybe dreamed about for a really long time. And it was something brand new. I had never done it before. My second flight, it was also a new experience because I was going to be the commander of the space shuttle to the space station. And my third flight was on the Soyuz for a long duration flight to the space station. So again, something that was a brand new experience, and you're very excited about it. And I wouldn't say I'm not excited about this, but it's very similar to my last flight, except it'll be, more than twice the duration, so harder. So, because of that, it's definitely a different feeling. I'm not. I guess I could say I'm not as excited as I was the previous 3 times, only because they were going to be completely new experiences for me.
Do you, in your mind, have pages on a calendar that are floating around? Like, are you thinking about milestones already? September halfway mark, October you pass the U.S. single flight endurance record, those types of things, or is this just going to be task by task, week by week, month by month up there?
I am intentionally not thinking of any kind of countdown or milestone or ways to see the time pass. I think that would be the wrong approach. I think I have to handle this flight on a day by day basis, and and just take it very slow and methodical, and not be looking for the end from the beginning.
Scott, this flight has been more than a couple of years in formulation between NASA and Roscosmos, a very unique opportunity, certainly. What was the attraction of spending a year in space that provided the incentive for you to put your name in an available pool of candidates and ultimately to say, yes, I'll go?
Well, initially I wasn't too interested in doing it. It was something I had considered. I wanted to fly in space again. Definitely, that was something I wanted to do. And as I got to thinking about the year-long flight longer and had more time to consider it, it was something that I warmed up to, just because it was going to be twice as long and therefore more challenging, and something that I saw as a little bit different than just than going back to the space station. Even though a 6-month flight is very challenging, but doing kind of very much the same thing as I did on my previous flight.
So, for a full year in space, is it more of a physiological adjustment, or is it really all about the psychological adjustment of losing all the creature comforts of home and your normal earthbound routine?
Well, there's certainly physical aspects to being in space for any length of time, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this, is to see if there's a cliff out there with regards to bone loss, muscle loss, our immune system, the effects on our vision. So, that's part of the reason why we're doing this. But some of that stuff is kind of transparent to the person. Like, I won't be able to tell in flight, for instance, if I'm losing more bone mass or my immune system is affected. Certainly I could tell with the vision issues. But I think as far as a challenge for me, it's more of a psychological, the psychological aspect of it. Maintaining my level of energy throughout the flight, my focus. Not feeling all kind of cramped up and wanting to get outside. Those kind of things, I think, is going to be what's more challenging for me.
Was there a point where the reality of what lies ahead here, where it really sank in? Was it the day you left Houston? Was it the day you got down here to Baikonur? Will it be on launch day when you're sitting in your Sokol suit looking out at the audience in the suit-up room?
I think it hasn't sunk in yet. I recognize we're getting closer. It's about a week, maybe about 10 days away now. But yeah, I think it'll probably be probably the time I say goodbye to my family, the last time, and can see them face to face, which is the day before launch in the morning. And that's when it'll probably start sinking in.
Scott, sending a crew to the station for a year is really designed to understand better how the human body reacts and adapts to weightlessness over an extended period of time to help develop countermeasures so that we can go out into deep space, perhaps one day to Mars. Do you believe in that sense that you and Misha are pioneers in a way to further the understanding of this phenomenon?
I think, all the crew members that have, built upon one another and have preceded us and will follow us are pioneers in this effort. We're just, two guys that are in this unique position right now, being the first to do this, but hopefully, more people will do it. And, all these flights are important. And I think we're all, critical to someday, international coalition leaving low Earth orbit, going, the moon, perhaps for an extended period of time, or onto Mars or elsewhere.
Some people sort of view this as Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko signing up to be guinea pigs for a year in space. But really, if you look at the whole complement of the year's worth of activities, it's busy up there. Visiting vehicles, spacewalks, just any number of things, other research that will be done on board that doesn't involve you guys specifically. Is this going to be the most challenging period of time you've ever spent in space?
It'll be the most challenging time for me, certainly. There's be a lot going on the space station, and we'll be doing it, for a whole year. But you make a very good point. I mean, there's the 1 year science is a small part of this. I mean, Misha and I are primarily space station crew members that are involved in all the activities, whether it's, the normal science program we have, which is very large. We'll have 400 different experiments, over 400 different experiments going on throughout that whole year. Only a small subset of that is related to the 1 year mission. Those experiments are in much different categories, from, improving life on Earth to exploration-based research, how to get further away from Earth with, people and systems, and also the international science program. But, on top of that, we're regular crew members. We'll be participating in spacewalks, in the robotics activities, in the maintenance of the space station, taking care of the systems, repairing the systems. So, there's a lot more that goes on, for us, but also the rest of the crew members, that makes this, this mission what it is.
Scott, only 4 humans, all Russians, have spent a year or more in space on a single mission. No one since Sergei Avdeyev almost 16 years ago. With the more sophisticated research equipment that's available today than there was almost 2 decades ago, how important do you think the data collected from this mission will be in furthering the goal of sending humans to Mars?
I think, just the way, like you said, technology has developed significantly since the Russians had the last crew members spend that amount of time in space. Not only, Russian technology, but our technology as well. I mean, the types of MRI imaging capability between MRIs, CAT scans, ultrasound. We have an ultrasound on orbit. In probably all ways that we collect data, it has gotten better since this was done the last time. So, I suspect we're going to learn a lot about, our physiology and how longer durations space flight affects it, and hopefully ways to mitigate those effects, especially with regards to the vision issues we've had on board. So, I think it's very important to us getting, out of low Earth orbit for longer periods of time. And like I said before, it's not only this flight, but it's, all the other flights that preceded this and will follow this as well.
Have there been any additional measures or steps taken from the psychological support folks back in Houston that would exceed perhaps what a normal 6-month expedition crew member would have available?
I think we've discussed maybe allocating a little bit more bandwidth for uplinking, like entertainment kind of things. I don't know if that actually ever happened, but probably if I needed it, after a while you kind of feel like you're running out of entertainment off board, and having some extra bandwidth if you're going to be there longer would be a nice thing. I get a little bit, they'd probably give me a little bit more conferences with family and friends if I desired that, I'm sure. On top of that, though, really not a whole lot different than a 6-month flight, which is also a long time.
So, without respect to pages on a calendar, what do you think for you personally, just you personally, will be the hardest part of flying for a year?
The year. I mean, it's a long time. If you think back, what you were doing a year ago, which was, I guess, around, the St. Patrick's Day holiday 1 year ago, I can't even remember what I was doing. But, occasionally I'll see something in the media about an anniversary of something that occurred in the news, and I'll think back, wow, that was a year. It seems like it was a lot longer.
One of the interesting things, in my opinion, about all of this is that you and Mikhail will be part of 4 different expeditions, and a taxi crew, a visiting crew, will bring up a fresh Soyuz, which will be your ride home a year from now. Is it going to be difficult or challenging to keep track of the different personalities coming and going? It's almost like an air traffic control system up there on the station.
Our colleagues are really professional, and whether it's the Russians or European, Japanese, the Americans, we all get along very well. We're all professionals. This will be my 4th time in space, and I have never once had any kind of real conflict with any of my fellow crew members. I think they've all been great. They work very hard together, and so I don't really see any, potential, like personality issues based on the number of people we have. It's certainly interesting when you're on the space station and you get like when I was there, a space shuttle crew come on board, or a new person who had never flown in space before coming up on the Soyuz. It's always fun to see them come up to space for the first time, especially now when we're doing the Flight Day 1 rendezvous. So, the first-time flyers, we'll be seeing them on the space station, several hours after they've left Earth. So that's going to be entertaining.
I'm just struck by the fact that this whole episode, this whole odyssey is about to unfold for you. The last several days leading up to launch are always jam-packed with ceremonial activities here in Baikonur for the crew. You're in quarantine, you're getting set for launch, final reviews, the families come in, all these meetings, the media. So once you get on board the Soyuz and you strap in and it's quiet up there, what do you think those thoughts are going to be for you personally as you await liftoff?
Probably similar to the last time. The Soyuz is very cramped. Like any time you fly in space, there's a lot that can happen, and you're trained for all the contingencies. But you think about that. You think mostly about doing your job and focusing on that. But in the Soyuz, you sit in a very awkward position. It can be kind of painful. So I'll be hoping my knees don't hurt too much after being in that position for a few hours.
One thing's for sure, when you land a year from now, it'll be pretty cold near Karaganda when you land. When you come home a year from now, regardless of your physical condition, they open the hatch and you smell Earth again. What's that going to be like?
Well, I remember the last time I landed, and you were there in this big giant parka and complaining about how cold it was, and it was this blizzard. And for us, it was great. I mean, it was refreshing. The snow was blowing on our face. We hadn't felt different air for 6 months. So a blizzard was very welcome. So it's great, and I really look forward to that.
And what do you think? You're going to be commander of 2 expeditions, half a year of this 1-year mission. When it's all said and done, when you're back home in Houston a year from now, what do you hope will be the legacy of what you and Mikhail left behind?
I always say, my goals on these flights, maybe that'll be the legacy, is what I hope to achieve. And that is always, the number one thing is no one gets physically hurt. The second thing is we don't break anything. We protect the space station because it's a very valuable asset. Third thing is we complete all the mission objectives. So, obviously I hope to do that. And the fourth thing we leave as friends, and that's very important too. So, you know, I hope the legacy of this flight will be I've met all of those 4 objectives, which I've had on every one of my flights, and we've done that so far.
Mikhail Kornienko in Baikonur. Misha, thank you so much for making the time for us. Let me start off by asking, as the hours count down towards your launch to spend a year in space, what are the thoughts going through your mind right now as the magic moment approaches?
Вот, Михаил Борисович, ну, поскольку время старта приближается, время начала вашего годового полета приближается, расскажите, пожалуйста, какие мысли у вас в связи с этим возникают?
Ну, мысли, как ни странно, в первую очередь о семье, которая будет без меня целый год. И жене одной трудно будет. И внук 7 месяцев тоже подрастет без меня на год. Но, тем не менее, я готов к этому полету. Мы очень долго готовились. У нас прекрасная команда. И я думаю, что все будет хорошо.
I'm thinking mostly of my family, about my wife, who's gonna have a pretty difficult time. My grandson's gonna turn 7 months old over my flight. So, but I believe we trained, we get prepared, and everything's gonna be all right.
When we talked in Houston about a year ago, we talked about what the attraction was for you to spend a year in space that provided the incentive for you to be considered to do this job and then ultimately to be selected.
Вот, когда мы с вами говорили год назад в Хьюстоне, мы говорили о том, что же вас заинтересовало в этом космическом полете настолько, что побудило внести свое имя в список возможных кандидатов.
Ну, в первую очередь меня заинтересовала уникальность этого полета, потому что крайний полет на такой длительный срок был достаточно давно. С тех пор методы диагностики и медицинской, биологической ушли далеко вперед, поэтому у нас очень интересная научная программа, и я уверен, что наша со Скоттом работа поможет следующим людям, которые пойдут за нами, лететь дальше и глубже.
So, the uniqueness of this mission was the major attraction to me because no one flew for this long, for quite a long time, and over that time the methods to study the human body, the biomedical research and medical research has gone further ahead. So I believe our scientific program, the mission we'll be carrying out together with Scott, will help the people who will follow us on this path.
And in fact, Misha, it has been almost 16 years since Sergei Avdeyev spent more than a year in space, that any human has spent a year or more in orbit. So with today's medical measures and biomedical research capabilities up on the space station, how important will this flight be in paving the road perhaps to go to Mars?
С момента полета Сергея Авдеева прошло уже практически 16 лет, и вот принимая во внимание современные достижения в части оборудования для сбора биомедицинских данных, как вы думаете, насколько будет важен этот полет с точки зрения приближения к цели экспедиции на Марс?
Ну, я думаю, что это одна из основных целей, отработка долгих пилотируемых полетов к другим планетам. Потому что мы же не можем летать вечно по орбите, в конце концов нужно идти дальше. И вот этот полет направлен именно на такие миссии.
So one of our goals in space is preparing for the missions farther away from the Earth, say to Mars, and this is one of our goals, and this is the goal of this mission, to prepare for such kind of expedition.
Will being in orbit for a full year be a physiological adjustment as you go month to month to month, or is the psychological adjustment really the big hurdle that you will have to clear as you get comfortable in orbit and then watch the months go by?
Полет на протяжении года, что это будет? Это будет в основном вопрос физической адаптации, которая будет происходить день за днем, месяц за месяцем, или все-таки вопрос психологической адаптации к полету такой продолжительности?
Ну, я думаю, это комплексный вопрос. Это и вопрос психологической адаптации. Ученые уже предлагают различные варианты интерьера марсианского корабля. Есть такие эксперименты, они будут отрабатываться, в том числе и в нашем полете. Есть медицинский аспект, есть биологические аспекты. То есть это комплекс таких программ научных, не только медицинских, которые мы будем отрабатывать.
So it's a complex question. It involves both psychology and physiology. And psychology-wise, the scientists have already came out with the ideas how to arrange the interior of the spacecraft for the Martian expedition, and some elements of those ideas will be validated over our mission. It involves medical and biological aspects as well, and all together carried out in our mission, it will make it possible to make us closer to the expedition to Mars.
The fact of the matter is that you and Scott really have signed up to be guinea pigs for a year in space with this unique research over this long period of time. But there's much more to these 4 expeditions, is there not, with spacewalks and visiting vehicles and all the normal activity on a day-to-day basis aboard the space station? How busy will you guys be for a year?
Но вот кроме того, что вы с Скоттом фактически согласились быть подопытными кроликами на протяжении года, в рамках вашего полета будет происходить очень много на борту станции, экипажи будут прилетать, улетать, будут идти различные работы. Чем вы будете заниматься на борту станции? Насколько будет велика ваша загрузка?
Ну, загрузка очень приличная, и вот только на меня ложится 66 экспериментов, из них 7 по американской программе. Будет выход, у Скотта больше будет EVA работы, у меня один только выход пока предполагается. То есть свободного времени будет немножко, я так понимаю.
Oh, we will be pretty busy. Only I will be involved in 66 experiments, including 7 US experiments. Scott will have 2 EVAs performed, and I'll have only 1. So we will be fairly busy on board.
Are you going to be looking month to month at various milestones on the calendar, or are you going to put the calendar out of your mind and just plow ahead day to day, week to week, without paying attention to the hours and days that'll go by that will comprise a full year in space?
Когда вы будете в полете, вы будете мысленно перелистывать страницы календаря месяц за месяцем, считать месяцы, или вы наоборот попытаетесь абстрагироваться от календаря и будете просто жить на станции день за днем, накапливая вот таким образом продолжительность своего полета?
Ну, наверное, все-таки буду вести дневник, я хочу это сделать, и ставить зарубки каждый день, как Робинзон Круз на дереве делал, вот примерно я так буду делать.
Yeah. Well, I believe I will try to keep the diary, and I will be putting the notches on the tree in the same way Robinson Crusoe did it.
And Robinson Crusoe was, of course, a survivor. What do you think is going to be the most difficult thing for you personally?
Вот, ну и Робинзону удалось на острове выжить. С вашей точки зрения, для вас лично, что будет наиболее сложное в полете?
Ну, опять же, наверное, нельзя назвать какую-то одну причину, которая осложняет полет. Это целый комплекс, ну, во всяком случае, для меня. То есть это нехватка, это не хватает земли, не хватает воды, не хватает леса, семьи не хватает. Это психологическая, конечно, напряженность. Ну и ответственность за ту работу, которую тебе поручили, ее надо сделать так, чтобы не было стыдно после прилета. Потому что мне оказано большое доверие, и я хочу, чтобы оно было оправдано.
So I can't give you a single reason which would make this mission hard. It's a complex of things, again. So there are some psychological things such as missing the Earth, missing lakes, rivers, missing forests, missing your family, which left on the Earth. So that's the psychological aspects. Besides of that, there is a lot of responsibility which is laid on you on your mission, and you're trying to accomplish everything you are entrusted with, not to be ashamed when you come back to the Earth.
It's always very busy here in Baikonur in the final days leading up to launch, a lot of ceremonial activities. A lot of media will be here, obviously, for this launch. But when you are in your Sokol suit, getting ready to walk out to head to the launch pad, and even when you get inside the Soyuz and it's quiet in the hours that lead up to launch, what do you think is going to be going through your mind, Misha?
Ну, вот заключительные дни здесь на Байконуре, они будут очень такими плотными по занятости. Будет много всяких работ, будет много всяких церемоний, прессы приедет большое количество. Но, скажем, Михаил Борисович, вы уже одели скафандр, вы сели в корабль, и наступила тишина. О чем вы будете в этот момент думать?
Мы проводим в корабле до старта 2 часа приблизительно, садимся за 2 часа. И первый час с лишним у нас, конечно, занят работой. Это проверки герметичности, это проверки систем корабля и так далее. То есть достаточно плотное время, там некогда предаваться каким-то размышлениям посторонним. Потом нам включают музыку, мы слушаем, где-то песни по 3 нам включают, любимых песен, до контакта, подъема. Ну, а вообще, я, конечно, жду этого момента, и я бы не сказал, что я как-то сильно боюсь стартовать.
Yeah, when we board the spacecraft, we spend there about 2 hours, and the first hour is fairly busy with all the checks and operations we've got to perform on board. Then it gets kind of easier, and they put up some music for us to listen. Well, about 3 favorite songs per crew member, and this is how we spend our time till the moment of the liftoff. And frankly speaking, initially, you don't have really much time of thinking to think about something special. I'm anticipating this flight, and I'm not afraid to go.
Ну, в прошлый старт у меня пульс был 65 во время контакта подъема, когда двигатели заработали.
So, when I launched on my previous mission, my heart rate beat was 65 at the moment of the liftoff.
Which is extraordinary for anyone on any mission, let alone somebody about to go into space for a full year. Misha, when at the other end of the mission, when you and Scott return home, you're going to land in south-central Kazakhstan, cold weather, you're back on Earth, the air will hit you in the face when they open the hatch. What do you hope you and Scott will have accomplished for a year in space? What will be the history books' punctuation mark on this mission? What will they write?
Ну, конечно, такие показатели, пульс 65 в момент подъема, это выдающиеся показатели для любого космонавта, и особенно для того, который отправляется в годовой полет. Но будем считать, что год прошел, вы возвращаетесь в Южный или там, в Центральный Казахстан вместе с Котом. Что вы думаете о возможных результатах этого полета? Что вы выполните со Скоттом за вот этот год, и что, по-вашему, может войти в историю космонавтики?
Ну, мы выполним все эксперименты, которые нам поручены, потому что иначе просто не может быть. Они есть в программе, они есть в моем расписании, эти эксперименты, и я думаю, это будет достаточно весомый вклад в науку и в будущее пилотируемой космонавтики. Вот я уверен, что мы все это сделаем.
So we will complete all the experiments we've got to perform. There can't be the other way. So I've got them all planned. I've got them on my personal schedule. And we will bring some results which will contribute to the space science and technology, and which will help to achieve the progress in the space flight in future.
And a final question. You and Scott and Gennady will have the privilege of being aboard the space station in July at the time of the 40th anniversary of Apollo-Soyuz, a very important milestone mission. Some people say it really was the mission that gave birth to the international partnership that formed the International Space Station that you will be living on for a year. How significant is that for you to be part of that anniversary, and how significant is it that Apollo-Soyuz really was the pathfinder to the home that will be your home for a year in space?
Вот, ну, вы вместе с Геннадием Ивановичем, Падалкой и со Скоттом окажетесь в таком уникальном положении. То есть вы на станции будете во время годовой экспедиции, во время юбилея полета «Союз-Аполлон» в июле месяце. И вот какие ваши мысли о, так, связи вот этих двух событий, о важности того полета, который на самом деле открыл путь к созданию того дома, в котором вы будете жить на протяжении года на орбите?
Я помню, когда в 1975 году «Союз-Аполлон» полетел, для меня это было, конечно, большое событие. Это прекрасная миссия, это образец того, как надо и нужно работать вместе в таком важном деле, как освоение космоса. Я тогда купил значок, такой большой вот он, значок, и я с гордостью носил его на куртке. Сигареты «Союз-Аполлон» были. Это было, конечно, замечательное событие. И у меня эта дата в моем крю-ноутбуке забита. Не только это, а все памятные даты, которые касаются космонавтики. И мы обязательно позвоним с борта и поздравим всех участников той миссии «Союз-Аполлона». Я, конечно, перед ними преклоняюсь.
So I remember 1975 when this mission was launched, and that was a great mission. Can actually judge it as the textbook example of the way how the international cooperation should be executed. So, and I was really marveling that mission. I was proud that it was happened, so I bought myself a huge pin with Apollo-Soyuz insignia, put it on my jacket, and I was proud to wear that badge. And we are aware of that event. I've got it scheduled in my crew notebook, and when we are on board, we will celebrate it with making the phone calls to all the participants of that mission and congratulating them on that wonderful anniversary.
Dr. Steve Gilmore, Scott Kelly's flight surgeon. Steve, it is going to be a very interesting year. A mission like none other that we've flown on the International Space Station. First of all, what is Scott's state of mind, and how is he preparing as he heads into the home stretch for a full year away from the planet?
Well, Scott's been doing great. One of the things that's interesting about Baikonur, like at the Kennedy Space Center, is the juxtaposition of nature and all the technical equipment that they interact with. So he has the opportunity to go out and take walks, kind of experience nature. He's also been doing some things like, you know, catching up with friends, and so he has a lot of time in his schedule that's unscheduled to, you know, just relax and do those kind of things before he prepares and takes off for the mission.
In the months leading up to launch, did you two discuss the psychological preparations required for this? How you get your family squared away, you know, for being away from them for a year? What are the mechanics of getting ready to leave the planet for a year?
Well, one of the unique things about working with Scott is I had the opportunity to work with him when he did his six-month mission, and in many ways that's kind of a dry run for what we're doing with the one-year mission. I work with a lot of colleagues back in Houston, and we have a support network that we put in place for crews and their families. And I think the most important thing is making sure that there's the opportunity for communication and video conferences and things like this, so that crew members feel like they can still be a part of the things that are going on a day-to-day basis with their families. And I think that's really the key element to making sure that things at home as well as are going well, so that things on the station also go well. He can have his mind focused on that.
Is there a particular characteristic to Scott Kelly that made him the right guy for this mission, in both from a physical as well as a psychological point of view?
I think that, you know, in the medical group, we get a we don't get the final say on that type of thing. We did do some assessments on people that would be eligible to do a one-year mission, and some of the technical considerations were the history of radiation exposure and things like this. So I think one of the unique aspects, though, about Scott is that he's a fairly concise and direct individual, and I think that'll be a valuable trait for the teams that are working and supporting him. It's easy to know what he needs, and I think that'll be something that'll serve the mission well.
Is there any milestone point over the course of a year where you'd be looking for something, be on the lookout for something that from a flight surgeon standpoint you need to be aware of? Is it the 6-month point? Is it the 10-month point as he heads into the final weeks? How does that all work out?
We design our missions with a lot of sort of checks in place to just kind of see how things are going, so that we can identify small things so they don't become larger things. And I think one of the more important things that we did before the mission is going to start is have a discussion about ways to find Scott a little, and Misha as well, some variety and a little bit of flexibility in the normal schedule that's put together for crew members. And that way I think it'll make the experience vary a little bit throughout the course of the year, and I think that'll be an important element of making sure that they get through with the kind of energy and stuff like that that's needed to do well during that entire time.
And finally, Steve, it's all about these guys being guinea pigs for critical science to expand the database for countermeasures, perhaps that will lead to deep space explorations and hopefully on to Mars. What do you consider to be the most critical from a biomedical standpoint, the most critical things that the science program folks will be acquiring over the course of a year in this very unique opportunity?
Well, a little bit unlike our Russian counterparts, for us, Scott will be the first U.S. person that spends an entire continuous year in space. And, you know, we're in the process of looking at future missions that either they'll vary by the distance from Earth or the amount of time people will spend away from Earth in the special environments. And so I think for us, what the important part of that will be is, as opposed to one specific measure, you design missions, and you take an educated guess based on the data that you have available. And the second critical part of that is experience. And so the experience for all the teams, not just the scientists supporting the crew member, will help us design the right mission, the right medical checks, the right length of day. All those kinds of questions will be looked at as a result of the experience that we gain from having a crew member in space for a year.